Well, it's good evening, everybody, and what an honor and a privilege to spend this time with you all. You know, it's so exciting to have heard about everything that you did over the weekend and to see the results of those projects that you did. Oh, well done. I think it's absolutely amazing. It really makes it so much more important that we sit together in the spirit of the friendship and fellowship of our Rotary family. And in doing so, we celebrate the honor of Rotary and the impact that it has on the world. And you felt that this past weekend working on those projects. I'm sure you went to sleep those evenings in a much more peaceful way, knowing that you had contributed to your communities over the weekend. Sorry, Carolyn, you've heard a few of these quotes, so they're probably still fresh in your mind. But there's one that always resonates with me, and that is what Winston Churchill said. He said, we make a life from what we get, but we make a living from what we give. And I think that is so true. When we give, our lives are enhanced in a way that we honestly cannot measure. You know, by now you have been probably filled with information over the year. You've attended so many programs, so many projects, so many assemblies, so many Rotary meetings. Well, one has to celebrate sometime. So let's celebrate together this evening and really just have a conversation. I'm going to just share some stories and the influence that Rotary has had in my life, and you will see the foundation woven throughout this quilt of my life. I don't think any Rotarian can walk through their Rotary journey without being hand in hand with the Rotary Foundation. And a good illustration is that last year in September, I was so fortunate to go on a trip with a group of Rotarians to Uganda. And we inaugurated the new Peace Center at the Makerere University in Kampala. It was an amazing moment. I'll always remember this. It was the coming together of a circle for me personally. My early years for fighting for peace and equality in South Africa to this moment where we were opening a Rotary Peace Center in Africa for Africans with programs designed by Africans for Africa, addressing African problems with African solutions and bringing peace to that continent. I have not seen that before. It's always somebody else's solution for community problems. In this case, it's a community that is sitting down and solving their own problems. And gosh, do they know the answers? It was an amazing experience. So here I was, a very proud Afro-Canadian, listening to our Canadian President, Jennifer Jones, represent Rotary. Which was a stunning and a poignant moment, showcasing what we do as Rotarians when we walk hand in hand with the Rotary Foundation. And that visit reminded me of the following words from the 1990-91 Rotary International President, Paulo Costa, from the Rotary Club of Santos in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And he said, Rotary International's masterpiece is the Rotary Foundation. It transforms our most daring dreams into the most splendid realities. The Rotary world and even the political world are already aware that the Rotary Foundation is the most generous expression of Rotarian generosity, a generosity that not only brings benefits, but also brings help and cooperation to solve the problems that affect mankind. Only God achieves the impossible, but the Rotary Foundation achieves the best that mankind can possibly achieve. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to talk to you folks about this evening, because most of my stories are pretty dark and pretty depressing, and they address a lot of what one man does to another man, what I like to call man's inhumanity to man. And just thinking about those sort of aspects in life made me think about courage. The courage that many people call upon to survive in this world today. Looking at those students at Makerere, thinking of the journey that some of them walked, realizing the courage that they and their supportive family had needed to get them to this point in life was absolutely unbelievable. But if we look at the word courage, the definition of it really is the quality of mind or spirit that enables a person to face difficulty, danger, pain without fear, to face it with bravery. So what immediately springs to mind is the courage that's being displayed in Ukraine with this unnecessary war, the courage the victims of the earthquake in Turkey and Syria are displaying, and all those facing those huge disasters that our world is confronting. But what of that courage that is needed by so many on a daily basis, just to survive? You know, there are millions of refugees all over the world at the moment. Syria is a disaster, amongst other things. I mean, oh my gosh, can you just imagine what those people are dealing with? There are those that are fleeing from untenable situation, as the refugees are. There are women in cultural situations where they have absolutely no choice of their own and are owned by others. There's slavery, and then there is just sheer poverty. Our world is full of anxiety and strife today, and we look at what we have come to accept as daily occurrences. This is the war in Ukraine, the gun violence over our border, disrespect and conflict in politics, even horrific events in our own communities. And I would even venture to say, even amongst some of us gathered here together this evening, there are those that face on a daily basis, needing courage to survive and to succeed. Now, proudly in Rotary, we emphasize diversity, equity, and inclusion. But if we're realistic, we have a very long way to go in our societies. Just one example, our whole social structure has been slow to change from a very male-dominated society to one of true equality. And I really, really wish I could say something different. But patriarchy is as prevalent around the world as racism and xenophobia are. We can't hide from it, not even here. And it takes great courage to make a change from this model and accept the equality of all. It's a fight being fought on all levels, and sometimes it succeeds, but other times it doesn't. So very, very proudly, Rotary faces it face to face. It's taking it on frontally and making sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a flag that we fly high. Now, as members of Rotary, there are going to be times that we will all need the courage to make the decisions that are not always easy to make. One needs the courage of one's convictions and support of those around you to do the right thing. Elizabeth Stanton said, "The best protection any woman can have is courage." And I would suggest that this applies to both men and women, and especially to all of us as Rotarians. We have to have the courage to face the needs of our communities and to do something about it. So to continue sort of in this vein, and because I'm a woman, I'm going to tell you a couple of stories associated with women's courage. And the first one actually took place in my own community. You may be aware of the organization Dress for Success, which provides women a leg up when they want to re-enter the job market after a time spent in poverty or abuse. Women who've emerged from addiction or life on the streets. And can you imagine the courage that they actually need? But can you imagine what they have to do? They've come from addiction, they've come from life on the streets, they have nothing. And now they have to face a job interview. Do they have the clothes to wear? Will they be able to present themselves in a way? Well, my club, through a local district grant, supported a day for Dress for Success. These women came in off the streets and they had the opportunity to choose a business suit, to have their hair done, to have their makeup done, and to see themselves as business professionals for the first time in years. Standing next to a woman as she looked at herself in a mirror, wearing this new business suit, her hair cut and styled, her face made up, I saw tears running down her cheeks. And she looked at me and she said, "Today, for the first time in 10 years, I see the me I knew I was, and not the me the world has had to see." And, as I've said, I can only imagine the courage she would need and the fear that she actually has to overcome to reestablish herself in life and, in fact, to reinvent herself. And she could do this because there was a Rotary Club that thought of these things and through just a small district grant gave her this opportunity and gave her this self-respect back. A few years back, while doing polio immunization in northern Nigeria, I was dropped off under a tree with a Rotaractor translator, one other Rotarian, and the immunization team. And this was after a very long, dusty trip on the roads that really were not roads. And I can remember thinking to myself, I wonder if my family are ever going to find me again, right? Anyway, it was right in the depth of the countryside, right up in northern Nigeria, in Boko Haram country. We didn't have any police escorts or anybody with us. It was just us, the little immunization team, dropped underneath this tree. And it was amongst these red chili fields. And there were these complexes of compounds all around us. Well, the women and the children came to us all the morning. But by the early afternoon, when the women stopped coming, it was because they were preparing their evening meal. And I thought to myself, I wonder if there's some more children that we haven't seen. So I asked permission from the village headman, could I go into these compounds and see for myself if there were still children to find? It's a Muslim country, and being a woman, this was allowable. And going through these compounds, these sort of little homesteads, yes, we did find children. But what I did find was that I came across a very simple well with a rope and a bucket and little girls. They were aged about 10 to 12 years, and they were collecting water, filling containers, and then disappearing into the bush with these containers of water. And the village headman told me that there was 3 other settlements in the area. One was 2 kilometers away and the other more than 3. And these settlements had no water. This little simple well was the only water that they had in the area. So when I got back to the tree and the immunization team, I asked what it costs to dig a simple well like that. So when I got back to my hotel that night, I took out my spending money, my travel emergency fund, and laid the money out on my bed. And I had enough money, not only for 1 well, but to dig 2 wells and to rehabilitate that 3rd well by putting a concrete surround and a cover around it. So let's think about how little it takes to change lives. Because 10 months later, I had photos of the Canadian wells in those 2 settlements. And every time I look at them, I remember the sight of those little girls with their dusty little bare feet, their buckets and containers on their heads, and their strong little backs, wet from the water spilling from the bucket on their heads, as they walked home through this dangerous bush. But what I was also, and what I am always reminded of, is the courage that they have because of the life that they face, that they will lead, and that they are sort of placed in because of where they are and who they are. Bono from the band U2 says, "The circumstance of our birth should not dictate whether we live or die. whether we have equal opportunity or not, whether we sleep in poverty or not. This is what the foundation takes as a rallying call. We are there through the foundation to help in every way that we possibly can. So this really is so perfectly represented in the experience I had about 8 years ago. I was with a team of social workers and community nurses visiting an AIDS clinic in one of the most horrific communities that I know. And this is the squatter camp called Zandspruit, just outside of Johannesburg. You know, there are hundreds of thousands. In fact, I think it's over 1 million people at the moment who live in these shacks made out of cardboard, plastic, discarded bits of wood. There's no water, there's no sanitation. Most of them are unemployed and they have no access to education or health services. And there are many, many children. A young girl came running up to me and she thrust this brand new baby into my arms. And she said to me, please take my baby, take him and make him yours. You know, I looked at her in absolute bewilderment and I said to her, why would you want me to do this? Why would you want to give me your baby? And her reply was, I'm 14 years old. I have no education. I'm a prostitute and I have AIDS. What future is there for my baby? Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Your heart just breaks. But so fortunately, we had those social workers and Rotary with us, and they literally scooped her and her baby up. And today, she lives in a foster home. She goes to post-educational college and has all the medical that she needs. And most of all, her baby is safe. Her name is Elizabeth, and she's a remarkable young woman who, despite being through so much in her life, has now graduated from high school and is on a Rotary scholarship from the Rotary Foundation at university to become a social worker. I can only imagine the courage it took for her to come running up to me and to give me this precious bundle of hers. But she proved something to me that day, which I guess most of us really know, that when you empower a girl, you empower the world. The more confident and loved a girl feels, the more likely she'll make good decisions that help her succeed. And it's not just individuals and families who benefit from this, but the whole community is positively affected when girls make smart choices. We know we can change a country by empowering the woman. Our Rotary programs over the last couple of years have emphasized empowering girls, and the results are really, really starting to be reflected. They are being addressed through global grants, through district grants, and through scholarships. And really, we're making an amazing difference. But when we talk about courage, we have to acknowledge one man who stands out above many for having the courage to remain a true humanitarian, morally and ethically uncompromised, courageous beyond compare despite every injustice that came his way, and his name was Nelson Mandela. A special friend of mine, a man that I treasured. He said, I have walked that long road to freedom. I have tried not to falter. I have made missteps along the way, but I have discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. I have taken a moment here to rest, to steal a view of the glorious vista that surrounds me, and to look back at the distance that I have come. But I can only rest for a moment, for with freedom comes responsibility, and I dare not linger, for my long walk is not ended. He never wavered from having the courage to make a difference and then doing it. And in my mind, this is truly, truly what it is our duty as Rotarians to do. Our walk, together with the foundation, to bring peace and equality to this world is never, ever over. We have to get the job done. Our task to eradicate violence and injustice against women and men in any form is never done. Our fight against polio is never done until it's done. So we must continue to understand that a woman and a man's rights are basic human rights. Look, we all know what has to be done. We have the tools to be able to use the mechanisms of our foundation to stand side by side with us, and we can move forward and we can make these differences. So walking our road to freedom ultimately is what makes us an effective human being. So together, both inside and outside of our communities, we must be there to offer all of humanity absolute equal respect and opportunity to walk their freedom walk so that they can have their dreams come true. There should honestly be no reason why any child, be it a boy child or a girl child, cannot have every opportunity to reach their full potential. But it's up to us to have the courage to work to bring to the world what it really needs: peace, equality, and the opportunity for all. Each one of us needs to draw on our own courage to make the changes needed. Each one of us can, and each one of us will. We need to grow our clubs. We need to bring in members. We need to strengthen our organization in every way we can. We need to make sure that the wheels are greased so that the Rotary Foundation cogs can turn on those axles, so that we can do the programs and the projects that are coming our way. We need to make sure that we leave a legacy for the years ahead, so that we build our endowment fund in such a way that we are strong and powerful and can satisfy every call on us to help and change the world. We have to be the change makers. We have to look at who we are and what we do, and then we have to offer this gift to those around us. So in closing, I will just say that may you all now walk in peace as you so courageously go forward as Rotarians. Take courage that what you are doing is right for world peace, and celebrate your Rotary journey. It has changed my life. It has made a difference to me beyond compare. I honestly don't know what my life would have been like without Rotary. And I think once one understands that you get so much more back from Rotary than what you actually give, it really is. It's the biggest gift that you possibly can have. But know how to use Rotary. Know what it does. Know what it offers. And then do it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dean, very much.
I'll open it now for any questions that anybody would like to have, if there's time for that, Melissa.
We do have time, and actually I was hoping if you have a question for Dean, could you type it in the chat? With so many of us on here, it might be the easiest way for me to see your questions. And while we give everybody a moment, Dean, I heard you speak the other day about the foundation goal for 2025. Do you know what I'm talking about? Would you share that with everybody? I think that's very impactful when I heard that.
You know, if you think about our foundation training, there's always been an emphasis on our annual programs fund. And yes, that's absolutely necessary because the annual programs fund supports the Rotary of today. We invest the money for 3 years, 50% comes back in the form of DDF if you want it, and 50% goes into the World Fund that you can draw upon for all your grants and whatever. But what about our endowment fund? This is the stability of our Rotary Foundation. This is what protects us against inflation. It protects us in changes all around the world. We need to make this so big that we don't get affected, that we don't have to cut funding, that we don't have to say to clubs, sorry, we don't have enough money to be able to support you in what you want to do. So the goal is to grow the endowment fund to $2.025 billion by the year 2025. There's a certain expectancy of cash, and that would be about 600 million, but the remainder in what we would consider legacy. That means leaving something in your will, giving something in a way that will come later down the road. And the endowment fund's an amazing thing. I was looking at an endowment the other day. It was an endowment that was done about 10 years ago at a cost. It was $25,000 that were invested. Over the last 10 years, there have been more than $1,000 contributed every single year from the dividends and returns from this into the direction that the person who made the endowment wanted it to go. But today, that fund is worth $31,000. So not only has it grown, but it will continue growing in perpetuity while continue generating revenue. So it's something which is stunning. And I see Carol Nath has just said that your district has a named endowment in place this year in tribute to district leadership past, present, and future. And it's named Best of Friends Heritage Fund. Wow. What can I say? Thank you, thank you, thank you. You have given us a gift because you can continue contributing to that. And just think of the good that you are going to do from this promise.
Thank you, Dean.
Does that answer your question, Melissa?
Yeah, I was blown away with the goal that would then allow it to become sustainable and really stop, as you said in this speech, about not having to hold back some money from what we were being given in grants in order to keep sustainability. You know, you have a growth model in mind to do that on your own. That's wonderful. We've had someone would like you to describe your role as a trustee and what you do and what that's all about. Could you do that for us?
I will with pleasure, but let me just finish one thought about the endowment fund, if I can remember what it was now. Oh gosh, it slipped my mind totally. I'll get back to it, I'm sure. Okay, what do I do as a trustee? This is what my thought was. We as the Rotary Foundation, if you look at foundations across the world, we are tiny. We are absolutely minute. We draw on our Rotarians for our donations. What about the big world out there? Shouldn't we be going out into corporations, into our communities, and asking them to invest in the Rotary Foundation? I heard the other day that the MasterCard Foundation is worth $56 billion. Here we are striving for $2.025 billion. We have a long way to go when we think that we really want to be a player in the world of giving. So the Board of Trustees are appointed officials. They are appointed in the sense that they are confirmed by the Board of Directors, but they are nominated by the chair trustee to the Board of Directors to confirm. So in fact, there is an election which does take place. There's there's nominations that come forward. We are assessed and we are brought together. Because of our knowledge and understanding of finance, perhaps, of investment, of auditing, of fundraising, and of stewarding money as an NGO. We meet quarterly as trustees, and we look at the investment potentials. We look at the funds that need to be raised. We look at how the money is being stewarded across the world. We look at the needs of the communities and try and address them. So in the just very recent past, we've had all these disasters come our way and sort of really hit us. We have never been a disaster response organization, but our Rotarians at grassroots levels have felt so passionately with what has happened lately that they have almost forced us to address disaster relief. And if one thinks about disaster relief, there are sort of 3 stages within it. There's the first 24, 48, 76 hours, that instant need of people that are decimated. Then you have to bring in the second phase, which is you have to start looking at the utilities, give them water, give them food, give them shelter, build the roads so that they can be accessed. And then finally, which is where we have over the years done so well, is the rebuilding of whatever is necessary. And I always think back of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, after the tsunami, was completely decimated. There was a huge upsurge, and there were about 100 charities that came in and were working with Sri Lanka after the immediacy of the tsunami. But a year later, there was only one charity left, and that was Rotary, the Rotary Foundation. And what did we do? We rebuilt their whole education system and got them up and running again. So in the past, we were always there for the long term. But today, we need to think about what's needed in immediacy. So we put into place a disaster relief fund, which when a disaster happens, clubs, districts can apply for a $25,000 grant for immediacy. Then we got the Ukraine. Ukraine came along. Now the disaster relief fund was really only in place for natural disasters. Ukraine is not a natural disaster, so how do we deal with this? But there was such an upsurge from our Rotarians that today, in effect, we have had more than $17 million move through the Ukraine Disaster Relief Fund in support of Ukraine's needs. We have now had about $2.5 million made available for Syria and Turkey. This is being spent as fast as we possibly can. And Pakistan with the floods, there's about $75,000 in that pot at the moment for people to use. Because it's new, we have to set some criteria around this. We have to start looking, what is a disaster of magnitude? And how will we address it? How will we measure it? So yeah, that's kind of what we do. We look at what the needs are, we try and address them, and we try and stay true to the ethics and what Rotary is all about. We also try and make very, very sure that the monies that have been donated are spent in the way that they should be spent. So I think that's kind of what we do in a nutshell. I see, can you give on the end polio status? Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do we stand at the moment with polio? Officially, we have only had 1 case of polio in the last 6 months. Since August of last year, in fact, we have had only 1 case of polio in Pakistan. I think there might be the announcement of a 2nd case. They're just busy tracking it down. But this is wild polio virus. As you know, in the beginning, there were 3 wild polio viruses. 2 have been completely eliminated, and there's only 1 left. The only countries where it is still indigenous is Pakistan and Afghanistan. There's been a little bit of a turn down in Afghanistan with immunization because of the banning of women going out into communities. So our immunizers are struggling a little bit, but everybody is working, the World Health Organization, especially with the Taliban, to try and get this up and running again, because we can't stop. But there is vaccine-derived polio, which is another virus. And unfortunately, we have up to 400 cases annually of that. This comes when the vaccine is given, and understanding that the vaccine is actually an attenuated live vaccine. Because there has been lack of immunization in the area, the children are malnourished or have been ill, that virus mutates into a virus which causes paralytic polio. So although it's not a wild virus, it is a polio virus which is affecting children, and it's through immunization. There is a new virus available, and that's an injectable one, which has a much, much better result. But it's expensive, and countries have to qualify to receive it. Slowly but surely, those qualifications are happening, and it's being done. If we look at the history of the polio as it has disappeared out of countries, we expect that by 2025, we will be maybe not celebrating the fact that polio has gone completely, but celebrating the fact that it has disappeared totally into the distance. It's interesting that polio is a plane ride away. You have heard of the polio case in New York. You have heard of the polio cases that have erupted in Southern Africa, and those are not wild polio cases. They are vaccine-derived polio cases, which came from that vaccine from Pakistan. And unfortunately, we had 2 positive environmental sewage samples in Montreal this past year. So we have to understand that we cannot give up. We have to continue, and we have to keep supporting polio. Sorry, that was a lot of words for a small subject. You have helped get the board of trustees to have socially responsible principles for investing using humanitarian principles. How will these principles be applied to our banking? We have a socially responsible investment policy. And it's something which was designed by Rotarians in our investment committee. So we have to be true to our principles. We have to be true to our morals. So we won't invest in ammunition, in building weapons. We won't invest in any of those types of investment which are contrary to what we actually stand for. Unfortunately, sometimes there are areas which are a little bit gray. And because of needing a return, I think sometimes they might touch on the gray areas, but never ever compromising who we are and what we are. So we do the best that we can under the circumstances. We have a lot of money that we invest. We don't only invest in the United States, but we invest here in Canada as well. Every dollar that you contribute to the Rotary Foundation is actually invested in Canada by Canadians. The Rotary Foundation in Evanston then draws on the funds as they need them to service your grants and everything that you applied for. So we have made very, very sure here in Canada that our socially responsible policy for investment follows the guidelines that you have set for us. Richard, I hope that answers your question. Last one that I see here, is there any thought about new strategies to reach the younger Rotarians and soliciting large numbers of small donations raised by social media that seem to be favored by the younger generation? Yes, in every single way. I mean, Rotaractors can now contribute to the Rotary Foundation and can take grants from the foundation. What a huge instigation, you could say. It's an incentive. If you can start drawing from the foundation, you will give to the foundation. So Our biggest challenge is how many younger Rotarians do we have? How many Rotaractors do we actually have in the world? This is an area that we have to grow. We have to make as positive as possible. But we're not going to do that until we change the way that we actually do Rotary. We can see in our legacy clubs that they are dying off as people are aging. People are staying with what they know best and don't want change. Young people come in, take a look, and then run away. We find that our greatest losses are in those members that have joined us and are in Rotary for a year, maybe 2 years. They have no effect. They're not being allowed to be decision makers. It's not easy. We need to grow our younger base because that is where our money now really lies. There is a huge amount of expendable funds available in those generations, and we have to make it attractive to them. But it's up to you in the clubs to sell that. We can, in Rotary, provide you with all the tools, but it's your duty as members in a club to bring in younger members, to motivate them, and to get them to invest in the Rotary Foundation. We have another area which we are lacking in, and that is in corporate donations. And where there is a very, very strong movement at the moment to look at that sector of our world. That is funding outside of Rotary. We have a pilot that has run for 3 years in India, social responsibility investment. And these are the social responsibility grants that are being given. The Indian government has said that a certain percentage of every net profit from any organization has to be given back to a community. And I think over the last 3 years, we have grown from having about $1 million come in on that to now having $5 to $6 million come into that. Australia has a program, and they are now, we had agreed at the last trustee meeting to allow them to go ahead with this. Brazil is doing the same thing. So we, again, have to look at this, we have to encourage. But how do we get organizations to get involved with the Rotary Foundation? It's through the members who have the contacts, members who know the leaders in these corporations, members that can go and speak to them. We have foundations come to us, and obviously the one that we always look at is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who give us $150 million a year to sponsor our polio donations. I sit as president of one of the Rotary action groups, Rotary Family Health Days, that the Gates Foundation have given us $3 million to develop family health, community health in 11 new countries in Africa. So there is money available out there, but we have to go out and look for it. Because we understand that this is a new way of going. Again, at the last trustee meeting, we voted in a new grant system, and that is social responsibility giving. So you are going to hear a lot more about that. But please, if you have any opportunity to bring the Rotary Foundation outside of Rotary into corporations who wish to give back to their communities, then call on us. We have people who can help you make the ask. There are people that can help and help you to support you in getting these donations. Think of your clubs, think of your communities, think of the organizations that would benefit through having this on their, you can say, resume. So yes, definitely, this is for the future in every way that we can.
Dean, could I follow up on that question from Tommy, the one we were just talking about? And I think what he's also referring to is something I've wondered. You've seen when, say, a natural disaster happens, the Red Cross puts out a program. Text this number, $10, and you know, we'll donate $10. Has Rotary ever thought about implementing something like that? Not necessarily in connection to a natural disaster, but in connection to a social media campaign, maybe of the good work that the foundation does. Because it's those smaller amounts that the younger generation seems very willing, or just people in general. I can give up $10. And then before you know it, you wake up tomorrow morning and they got $25 million. Like, have we ever thought about doing something like that?
They absolutely have. And if you think of our polio day that we have every single year, that's and the Giving Tuesday that we do, that goes out. But we are also reliant on the social media connections from our members. It's for us to sell it. And I'll tell you why, because we honestly and truly don't have the money to spend on that kind of advertising campaign. We are rated with a 4-star rating at Charity Navigator because we spend so little money on administration and services. If you look at what the Red Cross actually spends on doing those sort of things, you realize that for every dollar that is donated to the Red Cross, perhaps 30 cents, 40 cents gets to where it needs to go. The rest is spent on administration and support of the programs. We don't do that in Rotary because we make a promise to our Rotarians that if you give money to us, we spend as little as possible on getting it where it absolutely has to go. So we are short. We are short in the funds to do those sort of things. There is perhaps a little glimmer on the horizon that there are some large organizations that are starting to talk to us and saying that we will grant you funds to be able to bring in funds. But again, we need to make sure that it's ethically, we're not compromising our ethics in any way, and that everything is completely set up in that. So yes, we would love to do that. And when we do our campaigns, we are reliant on all of you to send this out onto the social networks where you can. There are links that are sent out with those programs. Anybody can donate on the Rotary website. There are donate buttons out there. So use them, use them. We don't employ staff, enough staff, let me put it that way, to be able to do this as well. Where these other organizations have people on the ground all around the world, paid staff who make things happen like that. Unfortunately, Rotary doesn't. And here one starts looking at some of the, you could say, the difficulties that we have. To get a raise in Rotary dues of just $1 annually takes more effort than I can ever describe to you. I wish you could see the hate mail that we receive every time that we raise our Rotary dues by just $1. So it's hard. We're in a bit of a catch-22 situation. There are things that we absolutely have to do, but we can't do it because we honestly and truly don't have the money to go out and hit campaigns. Sometimes we get offered, and I was on American Airlines the other day, and what came up on an ad on my screen was a Rotary Foundation ad. When I asked about it, we were told that they had given us $100,000 in free advertising. So it was used. So I hope that tells you that we wish we could do more than we do, and we do the best we can, but we are relying on you all to help as well. Absolutely. There's an answer, everybody know, that you can use Raise for Rotary. But again, you have to get that information out to the people. You cannot just leave it there and hope that others will come to it. We had in Finland a company running ATMs around the country. We provided them information of our work and actions. They then put a donation button for us on the display. Could that kind of action be done here as well? Of course it can be done. But it needs to be done not through Rotary International. It needs to be done by you in your district levels. That's where the power lies. The power of the relationships in communities with the organizations like that. It's difficult to get international campaigns like that going because of the different laws and rules from different countries, money, you know, the foreign exchange, etc., etc. But absolutely. You know, I look at, is it Feed the Children or is it UNICEF that has the collection boxes at airports for the bit of change to give that money? I've seen that in smaller communities. In our outlying communities where we have smaller airports, I have seen collection boxes for Rotary, but that is a community that has gone to their local airport authority and done it from their level. If you feel that you really want something like this, write it up, send it to the trustees, and make it an official request. How much does it cost all in all to vaccinate one child for polio? It depends on the vaccine, but the oral vaccine is about 70 cents. That's all that it takes, 70 cents to vaccinate a child. The injectable polio is double, more than double that for us to do it. And there are complications with that. There we go. I think that's the questions in the chat box.
Everybody's got another question. We've got a few
And you
minutes.
don't have to ask just about the Rotary Foundation. If you have a burning question about Rotary itself, please go ahead and ask. I'll see if I can answer.
While we wait, I've got something I'd like to ask you about. I know that you have a special relationship with Rotarians in Russia. How does that play along with what's going along in Ukraine right now?
Yes, I have a very strong relationship with the Rotarians in Russia. They are Rotarians. I have in my possession a document from them, which I cannot share with anybody. I have shown it to the legal people in Evanston, but it is signed with their signatures and their names, in which they do not support the war. They stand in solidarity with the Ukrainian Rotarians. They have contributed more than double to the Rotary Foundation this year than they have ever given. They have contributed to the disaster response grant. They put themselves in danger if they say anything. Some of them have actually disappeared. We have lost about 200 Rotarians because it was just too dangerous for them to be Rotarians. They've just received another global grant for work that they are doing. They are quietly getting on with the work that they can do in their communities so that they will be there when the war is over and when Rotary is really needed. So when you ask them, how are you doing? They always look at me and they say, we are walking. And that means that they will continue walking in the shoes of Rotary and be true to Rotary as long as they possibly can. So I support them and I stay with them and I fight for them. Because yes, there were movements that we had to throw out every single Russian Rotarian. But they feel just as strongly that they will be there to be able to affect change when change is permitted.
Appreciate you sharing that with us. Thank you. Does anybody have any more questions for Dean? Remember, it can be about anything. Anything at all. Like, for example, Dean, I don't know if you're aware of this. Everybody in my district is. Barry Rassin, he's my buddy. We're pretty much like this. How's my buddy Barry doing?
Barry's doing really well. You can ask Carol and Carolyn here because they spent the weekend with Barry Rassin.
You know, I was unable to join you on Friday. I'm sure he was asking for me. Everybody knows how much I love Barry.
No, he's an amazing man, and you are so lucky to have him as the chair of your Rotary Foundation next year. He
Mhm.
has set some very, very ambitious goals
That's
for the
awesome.
Rotary Foundation. We're all going to have to work like crazy to achieve these goals, but he knows where the money's needed, and he knows that we'll step up to the plate and that we'll make it happen.
Yep.
So no, Barry's a very
Absolutely.
special person. Yep, you've got it.
Well, guys, it's 8 o'clock. We have more time, but I'm not going to hold Dean or you guys here longer. If you don't have any burning questions, this is your opportunity to talk to one of our Rotary rock stars. This doesn't happen too often. I can't stress enough what a great opportunity this is to pick her brain. You guys know everything you need to know about Rotary? I see them shaking their heads saying yes. They're like, Melissa, enough already.
It's the end of the day. I see a remark from Tommy in the chat box where he, I would say one of my Russian daughters is past district governor Anna Tumanova, and he knows her as well. So yes, yes, she's very, very strongly working for Rotary. Well, thank you, everybody. It's been a joy and a pleasure to be with you this evening, and good luck with what you're doing. You know where to find us when you need us. You have Carol, your EMGA Endowment Major Gift Advisor, joined you here this evening. You have Carolyn Ferguson, who's your Major Gift Officer, your staff support from the Rotary Foundation. We're all here to help you as you need us. So thanks for what you have done, but also thank you for what you're going to do in the future.
Dean, thank you for joining us. It's been an honor. We are just thrilled and head over heels to have been able to hear some of your stories and your Rotary inspiration. And you know, for me, it's been a pleasure as well. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. And don't forget, we've got workshops the whole rest of the week. So stay engaged and let's celebrate Rotary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.